As a fitness professional, you know the joy of helping others, and you know it's more than just fitness. We're training the whole person. Wellness coaching provides expertise that goes beyond fitness and nutrition. It's a holistic approach to helping others become their best selves while reaching their goals. To us, there's no greater joy than that. Join the fitness leader. Become a fitness leader. Become a certified wellness coach. Go to nasm.org/wellness.
Hey everyone, I'm Angie Miller. Welcome to Strong Mind, Strong Body. So I'm just wondering, do you do awkward, embarrassing things, or is it just me? Because I feel like every day I do something awkward or embarrassing. And for many of us, we never want to admit those silly things that we do. But you know what? For me, I'm all in on my weirdness. And what inspired this episode was I was talking to a girlfriend recently, and we were talking about some silly things that had been happening to us. And I was like, if we do these weird things, everybody must do these weird things. And we got to just laughing about all the kind of silly stuff that happens, like the waving at somebody, thinking that they're waving at you when really they're waving at the person behind you, or the idea of we all have this junk drawer that just keeps getting more and more full, or looking like you're texting intentionally because you don't want to talk to somebody in the grocery store. So we all have these kind of quirky behaviors. And I thought I would share a little bit of the psychology and the social reasons why we do it, and maybe some practical explanations. I guess just that I could say, hey, guess what? We're all kind of weird and we all do silly things. And I guess that if there's a normal, that makes us all pretty normal. So again, I'm Angie Miller. Welcome to Strong Mind, Strong Body, and welcome to my episode of 5 awkward things we all do, but never want to admit. Actually, though, my secret is that I have more than 5, so stay tuned because I kind of have a big old list of awkward things. Turns out there's a lot of them. So one of them is, why do we all have that one drawer full of junk? Or maybe you have 5 drawers full of junk. I don't know. I'm a super neat, organized person. But of course, I have a junk drawer. I mean, I've had a junk drawer since I was a kid. Whenever we would look for something, if we were looking for batteries, my mom would say, look in the junk drawer. If we were looking for a ketchup package, she'd say, look in the junk drawer. And so, of course, I have a junk drawer as an adult. So here's some reasons, some psychological or social or practical explanations for this junk drawer. One is they say that it comes down to decision fatigue, that we often get overwhelmed by daily decisions. So we postpone dealing with miscellaneous items like, oh gosh, I don't know where to put this, so I'm just going to stick it in the junk drawer. I'll file it later, or I'll categorize it later. I'll put it somewhere later. So we just randomly stick it in there because we have decision fatigue. We don't know what we want to do with it. Another reason why we often have this junk drawer is we have this what if mentality. Like, what if I might need this random item in the future? I mean, come on, you never know when you might need 300 plastic spoons or a million pens or some more ketchup packets or a koozie. How many of those do you have in your junk drawer? So many times I think that we have this idea that what if I might need it in the future? What if 300 people come over and everybody wants a plastic spoon? Another reason why they say we have this attachment to a junk drawer is that we do have sentimental attachment to some things. So some things might hold emotional value and we don't really want to discard it. Maybe it's that, Michael's jewelry box that your daughter painted for you when she was 2, and no mind that she's 20 right now. Or a picture that your son drew when he was 4, no mind that he's 18 right now, but how do you throw it away? So maybe it's not sitting in your junk drawer, but chances are it's not out on a shelf for you to enjoy on a daily basis. So that is one of the reasons why we collect things, is the sentimental value. Another reason why they say we keep a junk drawer is lack of organizational systems. So, if you're one of those people who doesn't have a clear organizational system, first of all, you can hire me because I love to organize people's spaces. But if not, then chances are you're just used to having these catch all spaces. You don't know where to put something. So, you toss it in a drawer and you figure out you'll deal with it later. So, all right, I also have an add-on to this one. How about an overcrowded desktop on your computer? So I do have that one junk drawer, but I also have an overcrowded desktop. I have this idea that I'm going to forget where I file a document. So pretty much I have about, way too many documents on my desktop. How about you? So it turns out that half the time I can't find a document because my desktop is so crowded. So maybe I would have been better off to file it. So here's another quirky behavior that we do, or an awkward thing that we do. How about the art of pretending to be working when the boss walks by? So they say that the reason why we do this has to do with impression management. We want to control other people's perceptions of us. And of course, we want them to have a good impression. Another reason why we pretend to be busy when the boss walks by is we have a fear of a negative evaluation. So we worry that we're going to be deemed invaluable or judged negatively. Maybe we're ineffective, or they might think we're lazy or we're a slacker. They say that another reason that research supports that we pretend to be busy when the boss walks by is because we want to conform to social norms. And often workplace culture values the appearance that we're super busy and we want to appear valuable to our organization. Another reason that you might want to pretend that you're busy when your boss walks by is job insecurity. These economic pressures that we sometimes feel make us anxious about our performance. And so, if we're insecure at all about our job, of course, we want to look like we're invaluable and we're constantly busy. And then last but not least, you might pretend that you're busy when your boss walks by because it could be habit from past experiences or expectations. So, for instance, when you were a kid and when the teacher would walk by, you always had to be busy working on your assignment, right? You didn't want the teacher to walk by and seeing you write a little love note to your boyfriend, or a note to your best friend. So, another awkward thing that we do, I don't know if you do those two things. I don't know. Maybe you don't have a junk drawer. Maybe you don't appear to be busy when your boss walks by. But I know that a friend of mine told me too that because she works remote, she always likes keep her light on so it looks like she is there, even when she might have stepped away from her desk, because she doesn't want anybody to know that she stepped away. So, another awkward thing that we do that we don't always admit is, have you ever been in a restaurant and a waiter says, "Enjoy your meal," and you go, "Oh, you too." And then they walk away and you think, why did I just say you too? They're not sitting down to eat with us. So they think that we do that because of this thing called automatic social scripts. We have these pre-programmed responses for social interactions, very much the same way when somebody walks by and they're like, "Hey, how you doing?" We're like, "Good, how are you?" Because that's kind of a pre-programmed script. We say it, we don't even think about it. It just comes out of our mouth. Um, Another reason when we are likely to say you to the waiter is basically it boils down to cognitive overload. And it's basically mental exhaustion when our brain is just storing too much information or it has too many tasks to complete. So our working memory sort of goes on overload, and it makes it challenging to process information and make decisions, but especially to focus and pay attention. So, because we have this cognitive overload, sometimes when we're in social situations, our brains just go to habit, to these habitual responses. It's like default setting. So, waiter says, "Enjoy your meal." We're like, "You too." We're just on default. We're not really thinking about what comes out of our mouth. Another reason they say we say these things, maybe it's not you too, but we just have these automatic responses, is it's this thing called reciprocity norm. It's this social rule that basically expects that we'll respond to someone's comment or action with an equivalent comment or action. So, like, we're going to respond to kindness with kindness. If somebody does something nice for us, we're going to do something nice for them. It's similar to when someone gives you a compliment and then you feel compelled to give them a compliment back. So that is reciprocity norm. I don't know if you get in the habit of doing that. I do that a lot, where someone gives me a compliment and I just feel like I have to give them a compliment back. But turns out we really don't have to. And it's probably not as authentic if we do. So that's why we say you too when a waiter tells us to enjoy our meal. Another awkward thing that we sometimes do that we don't want to admit is there's a psychology behind just one more episode when it's 2 a.m. So I don't know if you ever get caught up in binge watching and you tell yourself, oh, just one more, just one more. Next thing you know, it's 2 or 3 in the morning and you're thinking, I've got to go to bed. Why am I still awake binge watching old episodes of Seinfeld? Well, one of the reasons that psychology supports that we do this is called narrative transportation. So it's when we're so immersed in a story to the point that the real world just fades away. It's a combination of capturing our feelings and attention so much so that we're so drawn into a book or a movie or virtual reality or a podcast that we're actually transported, right? Our brain and our emotions are so absorbed and we're so connected to the characters that we disconnect from reality, and it makes it hard to disengage from the show. We basically just get caught up in the narrative. We're immersed in the characters, the storyline of the book, or we're watching that Seinfeld episode and we're like, well, I need to see the next one because I forgot what happens to Elaine in the next episode. So another reason that we do it is there's something called variable reward schedule. And I know you see this when you play games on your phone, because once in a while the jackpot will pop up and it'll give you coins. And then you're, of course, you get that variable reward schedule. So you get the reward and you're like, okay, now I want to play again because I just got 50 coins or whatever it might be. So streaming platforms also use unpredictable rewards to keep us engaged. So maybe you're binge watching a series and not every episode is good. So you run across an episode of Seinfeld and you think, that wasn't really my favorite one, but I remember the next one and I loved that episode. So I'm just going to watch one more. So when you watch one more and you get that reinforcement, then it kind of reinforces you to keep watching. And then you need to stay up and watch the next one and the next one. And that's variable rewards. Basically, you get addicted to the anticipation of another reinforcer. But when that reinforcer comes, then you want the next one. So, right? You go and you eat an Oreo and you're like, okay, I'm just going to have one more. You eat that Oreo. You're so reinforced. It feels so good. You want to go back and have another one. So video games and games on your phone are excellent at using variable rewards to keep you engaged. And they're basically these random rewards that you get, or they might be tied to your progress. Another reason why we binge watch, they say, is that we procrastinate sleep. So bedtime procrastination is a form of short-term mood repair or kind of a mood booster. It's like staying up past your bedtime when you were a kid and having the flashlight under the covers and you're sneaking that book and you stay up late reading the book because you don't want mom or dad to know. So sometimes it's that same concept where you feel kind of naughty or like you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. And the house is quiet. No one's texting you. No one's emailing you. No one's going to try to reach you at 3 a.m. And so it's kind of fun to set up and watch another episode. Last but not least, another thing that ties us into this binge watching narrative is just poor self-regulation. So when we get tired, our our fatigue weakens our ability to make good decisions. So basically, the more tired we are and the later we stay up, the more likely we are to keep staying up late because our ability to regulate kind of diminishes with fatigue. So I don't know. Are you a binge watcher? I am a binge reader. I don't necessarily stay up and watch episode after episode, but I stay up late and read books and go, oh, I'm going to regret this tomorrow. And I do, but I still do it. So another quirky thing is when you choose the longest checkout line, why do you stay there? So you go and you choose this line and you're like, okay, this looks like the best line. This is the person who this clerk or this cashier looks like they're ringing everybody up the fastest. So you choose that line. And then there's a glitch in the line. Somebody has 50 coupons and you're thinking, oh, this isn't going to go fast after all, but you stay the course. And so why is that? Why do you stay the course? Why don't you just bop over to the other line? Well, they say that there's something called optimism bias, and that refers for our tendency to underestimate the probability of experiencing a negative effect despite the obvious. So we kind of have this optimism bias, like I chose this line, I'm sure it's going to pick up, and we underestimate the idea that we could have a negative reaction if, even though we're sitting in this line and it's clear it's not going anywhere. So, in a nutshell, we overestimate our chances of picking the fastest line. We're optimistic and we fear what's called loss aversion. It's true story. Loss aversion says that once we're in a line, we're reluctant to switch because we might regret it. So what if we switch and then that line takes longer? So we just keep staying in the long line for fear that if we switch, that line's going to take even longer. Essentially, loss aversion is this cognitive bias that describes how we fear loss or how we perceive loss as being more significant than a potential gain. So our fear of regretting that we might switch lines is greater than our hesitation to stay put. So it's kind of the same idea of you are probably more scared to lose $100 and that pain would be greater than your joy of finding $100. Isn't that crazy? It's true though. That's what the research says. There's also the herd mentality. We assume that a longer line must be better for some reason, like everybody in front of you must know something. So if there's 20 people lined up in this line and there's only 5 over here, we have this herd mentality where we go, well, they must know something that I don't know, and so I should get in this line too. It's like when you're looking for a parking spot and everyone follows one another in single line rather than just going straight ahead to the next aisle or going further down the parking lot so that it's faster and 30 people aren't fighting for one spot. But for some reason, it's that herd mentality. And we all kind of follow each other and trying to vie for one spot. So I'm Angie Miller. This is Strong Mind, Strong Body, and I'm talking about awkward things that I do. I don't know if you do them, and why we don't really want to admit them, but why collectively we all kind of do these silly things. And it turns out there is some research behind our decisions in these situations. And I think they're kind of funny, and I think they're intriguing how human behavior is so ironic. And sometimes we just don't want to talk about the dumb things that we do, but turns out it's pretty universal. So another thing that we do is we pretend to text to avoid social interactions. Maybe we're in an elevator and the first thing we do is look at our phone and pretend we're texting somebody and it's just vitally important. Or maybe we're in a waiting room. Or maybe we're passing an acquaintance on the street. Or we're in a grocery store and we see our neighbor coming and suddenly we become very interested in these apples in the bin because we want to avoid the conversation. So the thing is, why do we do that? Why do we avoid social interactions even when we're very social creatures? Well, one of the reasons they say we do it is we fear or we want to avoid awkward small talk. So maybe it is our neighbor, but we really don't know them very well. And we just don't feel like expending the energy of getting into small talk with someone we don't really know. Or some people actually do have social anxiety or they're more introverted. Sometimes we just want to appear busy or important. Maybe you're at a store and you see your ex-boyfriend or girlfriend and you're like, "Oh, I definitely want to look like I'm busy. I definitely want to look like I'm texting somebody who's really super cool on the other line." And sometimes I know for me, if I do it, it's probably because I don't have any makeup on or I'm wearing sweats and I really don't want you to see me looking like this in public because I'm dressed in a way that I'd rather you not see me. And so I might pretend like I'm busy or try to secretly hide behind the apples so that you don't actually lay eyes on me. Or maybe I'm holding a bag of chips and a Diet Coke and I don't really want you to know that I have bad eating habits sometimes. So another thing that we do, I don't know about you, but I talk to myself when I'm alone. Do you talk to yourself? I will often use Bodie, my puppy. You can see him in behind me. I will often pretend that I'm talking to Bodie, but really, I think Bodie knows, and I know I'm talking to myself. And a lot of times they say that we do that because we want to process things out loud. We kind of want to hear ourselves talk through it, or we want to rehearse a future conversation that we're going to have with somebody because maybe it's going to be a deep conversation or a difficult conversation. But another reason why they say we talk to ourselves is, frankly, it's self-soothing. It's a voice. Even if it's our own voice, it's a way of kind of soothing ourselves and feeling like we're communicating with another human being. I know that like when it comes to meditation, one of the things that they suggest is that if it's a guided script, you read your script and you record yourself because you need to be able to self-soothe. It's your voice that you want to hear reading the meditation script because it's you reminding yourself that you have the ability to soothe yourself. So that kind of goes along with why you talk to yourself. So there you go. You can say it's good that you talk to yourself because it's a very powerful soothing behavior. So another thing, another awkward one, and I don't know if you've ever done this, is when you pretend to remember someone's name, but you've actually completely forgotten it, or you forget how or where you know them. Here's a random one. I'm in Virginia last weekend, Hot Springs, Virginia, and I'm at a resort and I hear my name. I don't live in Virginia. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I turn around and it's a gal and she's just dressed lovely and she looks lovely. And it took me a moment to realize how I know her. Well, I know her from the gym where I never have makeup on and she never has makeup on. And so she comes up and she says, "Angie, and she tells me her name. And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, of course, of course." But I'm still processing, right? And I'm like, "No, it's not, of course. I have no idea what her name is. She takes my class, but I don't know her name." So I pretended to know it. And the reason why we do that is we don't want to look rude. We don't want to offend somebody or feel like we're not very considerate, like we don't care about them enough to know their name or it's kind of socially awkward. We don't want to see them and be like, "Oh, wait, what's your name again?" Because that's just awkward. And we want to protect other people's feelings. So people love when we remember their name. I don't know about you, but when somebody hasn't seen me for a minute and they remember my name, it feels good. And I love when I can remember someone else's name. So another thing that we do, another awkward one, is we laugh at jokes we don't understand, or maybe we didn't even hear the silly joke. I have done this many times when I'm out in a group setting and someone will say a joke. And honestly, it's lost on me. Like, I have no idea, but I laugh because everyone's laughing. And of course, we do it because we don't want to look like we're unintelligent or that we don't have a good sense of humor because we want to fit in socially. And again, because it's kind of one of those auto responses. Someone says a joke, everyone laughs. Okay, we should laugh too. So, how about you? Are any of these, do you do any of these things? Do you have the junk drawer? Do you laugh at jokes you didn't hear? Do you pretend to know people's names when you have no idea what they are, when you run into them in a completely different state unexpectedly? So, Here's another one. Opening the refrigerator door repetitively, hoping that you're going to get a different result. Or maybe you step on the scale repetitively, hoping to get a different result. So they say we do this because we have disbelief or we're hoping to get a different result. I don't know about you, but sometimes I do it on my scale because it tells me a weight. I get on it again, it tells me a different weight. And I'm like, well, I got to figure out which weight it is then. So I have to get on it a third time. But the refrigerator is the one that I'm really guilty of, especially when there's no food and we need to get to the store. I can go to the refrigerator 20 times in an hour and I'm not really sure what I'm expecting. I don't know if maybe I somehow think that I'm going to be able to make a meal out of ketchup and jelly, but no bread. But I keep going back and just imagining that for some reason something's going to pop into my brain and it's going to be delicious. So we also just do it out of habit. We maybe forget that we just went there 20 seconds ago. So that's another kind of quirky thing. And I have one for you that I cannot not mention in this show because I really hope you do it and I'm not alone. And that is walking into a room and forgetting why you went into the room in the first place. Big pause, right? How many times do you walk into a room and you go, oh, I know I came here for a reason, but I forgot what I was looking for, or I forgot what I was going to do. And then you walk out of the room and probably 20 seconds later, you're like, oh, I remember what it was. And then you head back and go find it again. They say that it's mostly because we're multitasking all the time and we're just on mental overload. Or, of course, it could be just a memory lapse, right? Age related or not. Or it could just be that we're just always distracted, right? We walk in a room, we get distracted. We see that somebody didn't hang their socks up. And so hang their socks up. I don't know why I just said hang their socks up, but we see that they didn't hang up their blouse. And so the next thing you know, we're like, I got to hang that blouse up. And then poof, there goes the whole reason why you walked into the room in the first place. So, or, what went along with this one, what made me think was how many times I've looked for my cell phone and it's in my hand. Please tell me you do that. Okay. I asked my daughter this weekend, and at first she was messing with me, just like, Mom, I've never done that. She had a very serious look on her face. And I was like, are you kidding me? She goes, of course I do it. Sometimes I'm looking for my phone when I'm talking on it. So I felt so much better. It's not just, age-related memory losses setting in. So, or maybe you look for your cell phone, but it's in your pocket or it's in your handbag. Or my favorite one is when you give it to a friend to hold, and then a few minutes later, you're like, oh, I can't find my cell phone. I do it all the time. I have my husband put my cell phone in his pocket if we're outside walking. And then next thing you know, I'm asking him, I can't find my cell phone. So, couple more. All right. Because this is fun. And I know we all do these things. Here's one. How about tripping over nothing and then looking around like something must have caused it because you don't want anybody to know that you just tripped over absolutely nothing. Or you look around because you want to make sure nobody saw that you tripped over nothing. Or my favorite one is I've apologized to inanimate objects. So I've tripped over something and been like, sorry. And then I look down and it's a bookshelf or something on the floor, a shirt on the floor. So there's that. Okay. There's the one that I mentioned at the beginning where you wave because you think somebody's waving at you and they're not. They're waving at the person behind you, right? So the last one, last but not least, I've got no reasons on this one, but I really feel like I could do a whole show on it. Why do we pop bubble wrap? Like there's some deep satisfaction with popping bubble wrap. I know for me, it's like anxiety reducing. I love to pop bubble wrap. And I know it's expensive. My husband's always like, why do you do that? That stuff costs a lot of money. Like, I know, but it feels so good. It's tactical and it makes a noise. And so it's very rewarding. So I'm Angie Miller, and these are the awkward things we do. And I'm going to recap some of them so that you know that if no one else does them, you are in good company because I do them. So why we pop bubble wrap? Why we wave at somebody thinking they're waving at us, but they're waving at the person behind us? Why we trip over an object and either say we're sorry to it or we pretend like it didn't actually happen. Okay. Why we look for our cell phones when we're actually on them or they're in our pocket. Why we walk into a room and forget why we went there in the first place. why we open the refrigerator door repetitively, hoping that delicious food is going to kick in, or we get on a scale repetitively, why we laugh at jokes that we don't understand, why we pretend we remember somebody's name when we don't, why we talk to ourselves when we're alone, why we pretend to be texting to avoid social interactions with other people, or why we always choose the longest checkout line and refuse to move, why we just one more episode binge watch until 2 a.m., why we say enjoy your meal, or you too when the waiter says enjoy your meal, and then why we pretend to be busy when our boss walks by. And last but not least, why we all have a junk drawer. So I'm Angie Miller. This is Strong Mind, Strong Body, telling you all the reasons why we do awkward things and letting you know that turns out we're not weird at all. We're just normal. So I'll see you next week.